Hi, and welcome to Legal Off The Leash, the podcast where we take the legal profession out of the box and into a happier, more fulfilling future.
We're your hosts, Elizabeth de Stadler and Scott Simmons. I'm still practicing and he's not, but together we've pretty much seen it all and decided there's a better way to build a career in law.
We're talking to the trailblazers, innovators, and everyday heroes of the legal world. You'll hear personal stories, hard-earned lessons, and yes, a little bit of banter between the two of us.
Because let's face it, law isn't all about billable hours and courtroom drama. It's also about finding what makes you tick, and we're here to help you do just that.
So whether you're climbing the partnership ladder, switching gears, or just trying to figure out what's next, this is the place for you.
Hit subscribe, grab your coffee, and let's get this journey started off the leash.
You know what? That was awesome.
Yeah, see?
Oh, that was genius. We're so sad.
We're brilliant, man.
Again, yes.
It takes years to build this kind of rapport. No, I honestly think there are very few people with who I would be able to do this. Don't get a big head.
No, I agree with you. Listen, I think we're like the Laurel and Hardy or the Morecambe and Wise.
Or Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde. I like that. Yeah, better than my options.
Which is the one where they drive off the cliff?
Oh, Thelma and Louise.
I think with Thelma and Louise.
Are you driving the car? You're driving us off the cliff.
Is that Susan Sarandon?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I'm definitely Susan.
Okay. All right. I'll be Gina Davis. Can I be Gina Davis in The Long Kiss Goodnight, though? Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Who's going to be Brad Pitt? A very young Brad Pitt, if I remember correctly.
It's his first proper movie, wasn't it? Who can be Brad Pitt? Well, there isn't a third person. We will both be inspired by his character.
Yes. He's wearing a cowboy hat.
And
a
not
white
much
cowboy. No, but that's how I want to go.
Hi, and welcome to our first episode of Legal Off the Leash. What we're going to do here is just give you a bit of a background into who we are, why we're doing this, and what we hope you're all going to get from coming along to these episodes.
God, that was good.
That wasn't bad, was it?
No.
Right. So then if we're going to start, we need to start with kind of a bit of background on who each of us is. So why don't you get us started?
I'm Elizabeth. I am a rehabilitated lawyer. I started off my career at a big commercial firm in Johannesburg, and predictably it did not go well. They would not let me wear sneakers. I felt constantly like I was dressed in drag. I pretty much upset everybody. I then went it on my own. I hid at the University of Cape Town for a bit and did my master's degree in consumer law. And over the years, I started getting clients until the point where eventually I started my own business. Now, I do legal design. I draft plain language contracts. I know that seems impossible, but it is. And I train other lawyers on how to just have a bit more fun in their day-to-day lives.
I suppose a good thing for us to talk about at some point is going to be that plain language bit. I mean, the whole thing that you do is going to be important. But I think talking about things like plain language and what that means for clients and what that means for lawyers, I think is going to be important as we go along this sort of journey.
In short, it's happiness, right? Like if people can understand each other, it leads to more connection, which is the key recipe to a joyful life, I think.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone about this, and I said lawyers make contracts for litigators.
Yeah.
When really contracts are made for clients. They're made for two people to have a relationship. And really and truly, if that contract is good enough and they understand it enough, most things should sort themselves out in that contract. They shouldn't.
Exactly.
But because contracts are written for litigators, clients don't understand what their obligations are. They sign off on these things, hoping that they're all taken care of. And then it does end up having to go to court or through or some
misunderstanding.
Misunderstandings or
for divorce.
because the language we aim for it to be clear, but it's not, because the people who it counts for the clients, they don't see it as clear.
Exactly. Camilla Anderson from Australia, she does comic contracts, and she has a wonderful way of putting it that contracts are not about dispute resolution, it's about dispute elimination. I thought is
perfect, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Because what we see is people always ask me, have any of your contracts been tested in court? As if plain language will somehow be less enforceable. And my answer is always, by the time that you get to court, it's too late, right? I don't know of anybody, and I used to be a litigator, where the relationship continued to exist after a court case. And with the plain language contracts, what we find is that there just aren't disputes. We don't get to court.
That makes so much sense, doesn't it? We're so geared towards the argument, towards the fight. And actually, when you hear stories about contracts that have been written and you just get back, you're told, oh, in the course of all of this, I reworded it and they said, yeah, that's not acceptable to us because that's not the standard that we work to. That's not the way that it's done. And you think, well, isn't that part of the problem? That because we're still writing contracts the way that they were written
200 years ago.
Yeah. yeah. And isn't that the problem, that things have moved on and we're steadfastly refusing?
I always say legalese is hereditary, because if I think about my first day at the law firm, right? I came in and I was my first task was to write a letter to the opposing attorney, which had to say, we received the documents that you have sent to us. We will review them with our clients and then we'll get back to you. And we went through 16 drafts of that letter. Myself and my principal, we call the partner that manages you in South Africa. And we went through 16 drafts and ended up with something like, we refer to your letter dated 25 January 2006. We have received your documentation and will take instructions from our client. We will revert to you soonest. Which is not even the correct use of the word revert. Because I would absolutely not like to be turned into the opposing lawyer. Anyway, do you think you should introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, that would be helpful in all of this. So, hi, I'm Scott Simmons. I used to be a practicing lawyer, no longer, haven't practiced law since 2012 when I suffered burnout, and we'll talk about, because you've been there as well. 2012, suffered burnout and decided that, and again, this is something that we're going to talk about. I didn't think I had options to stay in the legal profession. And I didn't want to stay in the legal profession. I really wasn't happy. What I was really good at was I was really good at speaking to clients, getting to know them, helping them uncover opportunities, goals, sidestep potential problems. And I loved doing that. That's the bit that I loved. So the opportunities started coming up for me to do purely business development. So that's what I did. And that's how Legal Balance was born, our company. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I teach lawyers how to win more work from better clients. So my tagline is, I'm a toolbox for turning lawyers into rainmakers. And for us, lawyers are the key to business development. And that's why it's so important. And I'm so passionate about what I do, because the world that we live in requires lawyers to be completely involved in the business development process.
Yeah.
It's not something that we're taught. We're not taught about the business of law. We're not taught about the importance of sales, of business development, of marketing and things like that.
We're busy learning Roman law.
Well, you're absolutely right. But if we were any other type of business, sales and marketing, top of the agenda. In the legal profession, bottom of the agenda, and that presents a huge problem for the growth and and change within the legal profession. And I love what I do, and I train lawyers how to improve their BD skills. And I'm doing this because, apart from the fact that I enjoy spending time with you, fundamentally,
you trained me. You tell people.
well,
it's your fault. Everything I do.
Okay, I can't take credit for some of those things, but I like to think that a part of you is because of me. But the when you are a rainmaker, you take back control of your career. Gives you leverage, it gives you control. And rainmakers still are like gold dust. Good lawyers are everywhere. There are good technical lawyers everywhere. But rainmakers are like gold dust, and that gives you leverage, it gives you control. And that, when you've got leverage and you've got control, that can be a really big contributor towards a happier career, healthier career. One of the subjects that we will talk about is how to get that kind of leverage.
Yeah. How to connect to meaningful work, right? Like for me, what I like about business development, although for a long time I wasn't sure what that meant. But what I like about meeting, I like meeting new people. And as you taught me, business development is basically having a series of conversations, and hopefully at some point someone will tell you that they're having this problem, and then you present yourself as the solution. But it is really, really about connecting with people, which I think is good for you.
Yeah. Because ultimately, what I have found, and you and I found it when we worked together, you can do this, you can do the drafting, you can do the researching, but you reach a point in your career where, for the vast majority of us, something's missing, because that sort of growth that you go through really, really slows down. And what you find time and time again is that what lawyers really find that they love is the business development side of it. They love it. They love getting to know clients. They love being seen as that advisor to them, that trusted advisor. We don't train our lawyers to do that. So you can be doing the drafting and the researching for 20 years and something will start to feel like it's missing. And it is that step. It's that next step. How do you use that to really, really engage with clients and get involved? The success of their life, the success of their business, all of those things become really important. And somewhere it gets lost, and people and lawyers feel that missing. They just don't know what it is. More often than very often is that piece, that next step.
Sure. So why are we doing this? Why are we making people listen to us ramble on?
So yeah.
Well, hopefully they're all here voluntarily. Let's say that. It's not a hostage situation.
Well, we've probably cajoled a few people.
Yeah, guilt trip them.
Just to get any numbers.
Yeah.
So why are we doing this? It's a really, really good question. Well, I suppose the stats speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Stress, burnout, suicide. You can speak. All of those things. And it doesn't make for the legal profession is a really, really noble profession, wonderful profession. And I actually think this idea of that nobility behind it has actually led to huge problems with it.
Yeah.
And as a result of those problems, these are the things that it leads to: alcohol use, the stress, the burnout, the suicide rates, all of those. I think because in the back of our minds, we have this noble profession that actually means that we don't then ultimately, laws of business.
Yeah, I think it gets very wrapped up in our identities. Your identity is a lawyer, and that just makes you really susceptible to overwork. And after that, it is also hereditary. Like what I see in law firms very often is something that's almost akin to hazing, right? Yeah. We're not bullying. We, at the very least, we think that the junior lawyers must work in the way that we work because that's what we went through in order to get where we are. So these really toxic habits get embedded in this massive system. And it's really hard to shake that, making changes. Like that's at least what I found speaking to law firms and trying to train them is, especially the older lawyers they identify so strongly with this way of working that it's very hard for them to move away from it. Yeah.
And it's in spite of the fact that the world has changed so dramatically. I read a really great article, I think it's by Jordan Furlong, who was referencing something that he'd read about the generations wars. And so what you have at the top of a legal business are the baby boomers, and then what you've got at the sort of start of their career are the Gen Zs. And what you've got are the baby boomers who think that Gen Z are lazy, and Gen Z who think the baby boomers are completely uncaring, and want them to do, you know, and want the Gen Z to do how the baby boomers did it. The difference being that when you were a baby boomer and you were growing up, you were told that if you worked really hard and put all of the hours in and, you know, sacrificed elsewhere, you would make it to the top of your career, your profession, wherever
there was a path, a very predictable path down to the year.
Right. And what happened was that they did that and they reached it, and it happened. And then what you had increasingly, particularly, I think, particularly, I mean, it steadily declined anyway, but particularly post 2008, 2009, but even the recession before that, you were starting to see that, you know, lawyers working really, really hard and not making it to the profession, that you had this pyramid formed, and so there has to be this attrition. So people had to leave, so they had to work really, really hard, but then they had to leave because you couldn't simply make every single lawyer a partner in that business, so that they had to be cleared out. So what you were seeing was this attrition rate. You were seeing people not making it. You're seeing them get ill, seeing them, and particularly post 2008. And what you have is this generation seeing their parents work really hard, sacrifice elsewhere, and still not make it to the top. And what Gen Z are saying is, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to work the way that the baby boomers did, to only find that there is no career path plan, whatever, for me. And so I'm basically working incredibly hard to make them loads of money. So there's no real path for me to get there.
They have far better boundaries. Like they're better at boundary setting, it seems to me. So I speak to a lot of law firms and knowledge managers and recruiters for law firms, and they say for the first time ever, like when I was young and I got my training contract, right? There was no option that you would leave before your 2 years are up. Are you crazy? Like you were privileged to have this training contract. These days, for the first time, they have problems with churn, that after a couple of months, they leave because they don't like the culture. And that to me is very interesting. And they also don't seem to be so preoccupied with money.
Yeah. Or it's not tied to input. Firstly, their values are different. And secondly, it's this idea that in order to make more money, you've got to put more time and effort into it. And we're seeing a real change in a world that's so technology driven, where your input can be sped up and the output doesn't have to be negatively impacted, right? And yet the entire most of the legal profession is run on the more hours you do, the more money we make.
So they're on a leash.
Well, yeah, we need you to be on that leash, working as many hours as possible. That's how we make money. And you've got a new generation going, actually, hold on a second, we could get this same outcome done much more quickly, but you're saying to us, the quicker we work, the less money you make. Well, that doesn't work for us, because we don't want to be tied to our desk 12, 13 hours a day over the weekend. Actually, there's more modern ways of working that means we can make that kind of money without having to put those kinds of hours in. But you've got a system in place that doesn't want to change the status quo because it's working for them, and change comes with too much risk.
Yeah. Well, that's basically what we want to do here, right? Show people that there is a different way of going about things. You know, we're hoping to invite guests who can show you that they have taken a different path, or to give you the tools to take a different path yourself. I'm hoping that we will make people less attached to that old way of working and more open to seeing the alternatives. Because I think having that sort of curiosity, like brain, mindset, I think also leads to a bit of freedom in and of itself, like just exploring the other options.
And sort of with that in mind, I suppose the question then is, for me, leaving leaving the practice of law was the best option.
Because it was making you sick.
Well, yeah, but back then I just thought I didn't, you know, I didn't know that there was, I didn't really know that there was, you know, consultancies out there that I could become a consultant lawyer, or I could, it didn't really even occur to me that someone like me could go out and just start up on my own. I
Yeah,
thought
it didn't occur
after,
to me either.
yeah,
Yeah, it just happened by accident.
how did it happen for you then?
So when I was still at the firm, we were required to write 2 articles a year. And I was always really into unfair contract terms. What I mean by into is not that I was pro unfair contract terms. And, so I wrote an article about unfair contract terms, and I referenced in that article a draft piece of legislation called the Consumer Protection Act. Just referenced it. And then by pure coincidence, probably about 6 weeks later, this act gets signed into law. And at that point, I'm the only person at the firm who has ever read it. So I kind of became the resident expert on it. So yeah, that's what sort of led to everything, because, you know, I burnt out just like you. I don't know, how long did it take you to to get over it? It took me about 4 years.
Well, this was the thing for me. What had happened was I hadn't been feeling great for a while, and I a lot of things. I didn't like where I was working. I didn't like the culture of it. I was doing these long hours anyway. We'd had our 3rd child, and I was really sort of missing out on being with her.
That'll do it every time, a 3rd child.
Yeah, we should have stopped at 2, but so we, a number of things contributed to it, and I'd just been working really long hours, and then a project came up that was supposed to last for 3 weeks, and it went on for 3 months. But the hours that I was putting into this, you know, it's not like it was supposed to be compacted into 3 weeks, long hours, 3 weeks, but it was long hours, 3 months. And with everything else that was going on, I got to the end of it, and my body just kind of just let go. And I woke up one morning and I literally couldn't see properly.
Yeah.
And I felt something that I had just never experienced. And I've had 2 bouts of flu, and people talk about man flu and colds and flu. You haven't had flu until you've had flu, right?
Yeah, we don't have it down here.
But this was something, and I couldn't process, I couldn't think. And I remember talking to my wife about it, saying, I can't go on like this, because I don't want to get up. I don't want to go to work. And it is not a case. It was something so fundamental that I couldn't explain.
But it's also physiological, right? So if you suffer from chronic stress for long enough, your brain will go into this sort of scarcity mode, which is why you don't want to get up. Your brain is telling the rest of your body to conserve energy. Like, that is literally what happens.
Yeah.
I got scarlet fever. I showed up at the doctor's rooms, and she took a look. I mean, I go very red. I mean, I'm already very red. But, and she said, when last have you had an AIDS test? And I was like, I don't get tested for HIV because, you know, I don't have sex with men. And she said that usually scarlet fever only presents in people with compromised immune systems, like people with HIV. Because for everybody else, scarlet fever was eradicated in the Middle Ages, right? So that was the beginning of the end for me, because I also realized it's making me ill, the chronic stress. Yeah.
And I remember I went into work and I explained this. I kind of, you know, I didn't know at that point really what was going on, but I knew I needed a break from work. And I went and I asked for a break from work, and I was told no, because another straight on.
How dare you?
Well, and that was the thing. And right there and then I quit. Literally right there and then I quit. And I built up a good reputation. I needed to take some time. Immediately that I quit, I was basically taking off everything. I wasn't allowed to speak to clients. I wasn't allowed to anything. So
Sure.
I had to see out my notice, but I was basically just sidelined. So I didn't quite at that point. I didn't quite get the break that I needed, but I wasn't doing anything.
The foot was off the pedal.
Like in a serious way that I don't know. I kind of feel like, you know, it's still there in the, you know, I still know that this happened. It's still there.
Yeah.
I'm still really, I'm really cautious about it. I will say this, that I have been really, really careful. I'm really, really I don't take on work that I know is not going to benefit me or the family or the business. Is that I am prone to looking at an opportunity and going, wow, I would love to be involved in that, get involved in it. And I've had it a couple of years ago where I probably took on more than I should. And we sat down and we had a strategy meeting where we were like, okay, going into the next year, there are things that you're just going to have to say no to, because you have to look at it from is this going to bring value? Is this really going to add value? And then last year, when we were building the digital course, the BD Breakthrough Blueprint course, I would say, Elizabeth, that was about probably as close as I had come to getting to a point of, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been as bad as when I left the profession, but that was probably as close I'd come to. The stress level was so high. I was so kind of worried about getting this course done and what it was going to look like and how we were going to get it out. And I was re-recording sections of it the day before we were officially launching it. Right. That was how much this course had kind of taken over, and it meant so much. And actually, if you look really carefully, you can see there's a couple of clips where my face has just exploded because I was ill, and yet I was still recording this thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's as close as but I've really, really worked hard not to put myself in a position to do that again.
I kept doing it as well. I mean, about 5 million podcast hours ago, you asked like how I got my practice. So after I quit the law firm, I went and I did a master's degree, and all of a sudden, like, people just started asking me to do opinions and stuff like that. And it was, in a way, liberating, but also it comes with its own pressure to work for yourself. Like, I don't think we should glamorize it. It's not stress-free.
100%.
It should hypothetically give you more control. I say hypothetically because I never really sort of took that control. I just always took everything on. Now I know from last year that it's a symptom of bipolar disorder. It's fun to look back and go, yeah, that wasn't my fault. It was just a symptom. I'm getting away with murder in my own head. So, you know, it's not that it's all moonshine and roses, and you have to learn to handle that level of control and be responsible and not say yes to everything, which is easier said than done.
And I think actually this is really important. And I know that we've talked about being careful with time on these podcasts and how long how long they run for. But I think that is really important, isn't it? That it can, starting up on your own, going into consultancy, whatever it is, can feel like a really great option. And actually, I actually think it really is. And I think it will continue to grow as an alternative legal career. But the reality is that when you go out on your own, you are now running a business.
Yeah.
And what that means is when you start up on your own,
yeah,
CEO, you are the COO, you are the chief marketing officer, you are the chief financial officer, you are the head of sales, you are the lawyer, you are the admin person, and you are the, the delivery person. You are.
And Roman law does not help you with any of that, right? I mean, that's back to your earlier point that we're just not trained for it. I mean, it took me years to figure this stuff out.
Right.
Or to outsource it appropriately.
Right. Okay. So this is what's really important, is when you first start, you have to accept that those are the things that everything, where people get stuck and where people end up in more trouble, is they never learn to delegate. They never learn to cede control of some of these things to enable them to get more of what they actually want, which is more of that freedom. So they take everything on and they realize, actually, hold on a second, I'm working just as hard, if not harder, than I was previously.
Yeah, it's the scarcity mindset, where I had this for many years, where you think you don't trust that the next client or the next project will come. So you take just anything, like even things that are not in your area of interest. And then what I found is you take on these projects that you are not in love with, and then they end up taking longer because you procrastinate, because you don't like doing the work, right?
Yeah.
But I also feel strongly, I mean, we've spoken a lot about going on your own, but for some people, law firm life, they like it, right? So I think it's important to say that we'll also be talking about how to handle pressure, even if you are in a law firm, or how to break free from those law firm norms. Because if there's something I hate, it's people on social media who just denigrate like people who work for law firms, because I always think that we should rather be helping people who work in law firms to do that better. Because I do think there's room to maneuver, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Listen, I think what is so important, and a big part of our discussion, is about the fact that there is choice.
Yeah.
And there's choice that I wasn't aware of, and choice that you weren't so aware of either. But it's not as if working for a law firm is the worst option. It's a great option. It is a great option. But it's about making sure that it's the right option for you, and it's about, any of these things are about making sure that they work for you and they work for your values, and that you understand what each of them means. I think it's really important.
And what you need.
That they understand, that people understand, that lawyers understand what each of these options and choices mean, and so they give them what they want and what they need from it. And if it does, it's about harnessing all of that and making sure that you are getting what you want and need from it as well.
Yeah. And that's how you get happier.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's what this show is about us talking about these subjects and giving people some tools so that they can find that route to happiness in their legal career, or to highlight to us that they're doing it the way that that makes them really happy.
Yeah. Enough said.
Right. So with that in mind, we've got 4 questions that we're going to ask every guest that comes on the podcast. Okay. And quickly, what we're going to do is,
we've never answered a question quickly in our lives.
I know.
What are you saying?
In the production, we'll just speed up. We'll speed us up 1.5 times. So
yeah.
People may not notice. We might just have slightly higher pitched voices, but hey, is it speeding along nicely? Right. Okay. So first question, looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self about navigating the legal profession?
I think I took things way too seriously. I've taken to reading this wonderful book, The Book of Joy, by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And the Dalai Lama said something that's really stuck with me. When you are faced with a stressful situation, think ahead 5 years and ask yourself whether you will remember this, whatever's happening. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And immediately you feel less stressed about it. And if the answer is yes, then you acknowledge the importance of the moment and you have the appropriate level of commitment to get what you need to do done. Like, so I would just not take everything equally seriously.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Yeah, mine's not going to be anywhere near as profound.
Yeah, it is a profound book about this friendship between these two men. I would suggest that everybody reads it. And no, we're not receiving a commission.
Hold on. When as we are sort of recording this, we're not. But you never know. We could ask.
Yeah.
Could reach out and tell them we're talking about it.
Spoke the BD master.
Always thinking. Right. So for me, I think if I could go back and tell myself something, law is a business. And the earlier that you can understand that, the happier your career is going to be, because you are going to start learning those principles. You're going to start understanding. You're going to start understanding what it means, and that is going to help drive a lot more of your decision making about everything. And once you can do that, again, we go back to what we talked about at the beginning, that control that you can have, I think, comes from understanding that at its very core, as noble as this profession is, it is a business. And once you understand that, everything else can drive everything else.
All right, I'm going to ask you the next question.
Go on then.
What's one thing about the legal profession you wish you could change? And how do you think that change could happen? I think I know what you're going to say. Let's see.
Right. Easy answer. Get rid of the billable hour.
I was right.
Get rid of the billable hour. And I know that we're doing this quickly. The billable hour is the single worst thing to happen to the legal profession.
Yeah, it didn't happen that long ago, right? This is something you said to me and I couldn't believe you. Like, when did people start charging like that?
Right. So although the idea of time recording dates back about 100 years, actually time recording the billable hour made its way into the professions in the sort of late 60s, really, in the US, and sort of made its way across the rest of the world into the early 70s and beyond.
Okay, so you can blame the Americans.
Prior to that, we were all doing a form of fixed fee work or value pricing, just not the way that we understand it now. But we were not wedded to this idea that our value is in our time, and the harder we work, the more time we spend on something, the more we get paid, all this sort of stuff. It has damaged everything from our relationships with clients to our own mental health.
Yeah.
And until we really acknowledge that, there's going to be so much lip service that we pay to, oh yeah, we're looking at ways that we can add more value. No, until you get rid of the billable hour and stop that and stop time recording and stop judging everybody, all of your lawyers and all of your team members, by simple, awful metric, there's no fundamental real change that we're going to have in the profession.
I think there's so much to say about this. It'll definitely be one of our future episodes. I think we can dedicate a whole episode to it easily, and I have so much to say about it.
Oh yeah, definitely. This will not be a tough episode for us. What about you?
What do I want to change? Predictably, like for me, I would love for lawyers to take a little bit more care with the language that they use with clients. Like, I think that we're so set in our ways that we sometimes forget that we are actually in the business of communicating and trying to persuade our clients to do something in a better way. And the language that we use is an absolute barrier to that, and probably the cause of every single bad lawyer joke out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so right. I look at it and I go, clients know that we're clever. Clients know lawyers are clever. They don't need their lawyer to speak to them in legalese to show them how clever they are. Actually, what clients want and need is for lawyers to speak to them in a way that they understand.
Exactly. So that the advice is actionable. Right. Yeah. They need to know what to do with this.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I make my living now is typically a client comes to us and says, I got this from a law firm. No one understands it. Can you translate it into plain language? So maybe I shouldn't be too eager to change that, because it'll be the death of my business. But I'm very eager for that idea to spread, I think.
That is unreal that you tell that story, because a number of years ago had a lawyer client of mine tell me a story about how a client of theirs had come to them and said, I've had this advice from this law firm, big law firm, won't name them. Had this, it's however many pages, and it was quite the document. And the client said to this lawyer, they said, I don't understand what it says. Could you explain it to me in simpler language? Could you provide me with your own report that explains to me what this means? And the lawyer said, I mean, yeah, I can do, but I'm going to charge you to do what you're paying them to do.
Yeah.
And I found that fascinating. But the client said, yeah, but I don't want to go back to them and have to and ask. The client was so afraid of how they would look with the law firm, rather than saying, hold on a second, I'm paying you not to give me this. I'm paying you to give me something that I can understand and action.
Yeah. But that's incredibly common. Mostly because they at that point so unhappy, and the law firm's charging them so much that they kind of do this equation in their heads to say, well, already paid this much, but I don't trust them anymore.
Easy, isn't it? It's mad. Okay. Number 3. What's a common myth about success in the legal profession that you think needs to be debunked?
I think it's that whole, I'm going to be an associate, and then I'm going to be a salaried partner, and then I'm going to be a equity partner, and that's the only way to do it. You know, that once you are on that path, you're stuck on it. I would love for people to feel like they've got more agency in how their career is going to progress than just that. But I mean, when I was at university, that's all we heard. I mean, that was what you did.
Yep.
The firms came to the open day, and off you're off to the races. Right?
Yeah.
And it starts actually even before you get to the firm, because you're told you need to get like the top grade in order to secure a training contract. So that pressure already starts when you're just a student. And I would love for people to know early on in their career that they have options.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. You know, when I was in law school, I didn't want to apply to any of the big law firms. I knew that wasn't what I wanted. And so literally just put to one side. I wasn't following this traditional idea of a legal career is only a successful legal career if you end up at one of the biggest law firms.
My problem is I'm a very competitive person. Like, I really want to win. So if you tell me you're chasing this target, I'm going to chase it. I'm going to try and exceed it. I mean, that's what happened at the firm as well. So they say, this is your billable target. And I go, all right, I'm going to do this 1.5 times. I was a bit into the prestige, I suppose.
And right. Yeah. I think that's something else that we will talk about, that you and I discussed, that superhero complex.
Yes. Yeah.
That's something that we are going to discuss, that a lot of lawyers have. But I think it's really good, because when you and I discussed this was like a real moment for you, wasn't it?
No, I'm kidding.
It was.
I learned nothing from you. Like, I don't want you to get a big head.
We're going to delete any reference to that. This last 10, 15 seconds. We're going to. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, because redefining what success actually means is, and not defining your own success by other people's metrics, I think is so important. Thinking about what your own personal values are, and then understanding. This is why I think what you said is so important. Those traditional views of what it means, what success, they don't exist just like that anymore. There are so many different routes in the legal profession, and so many different versions of success, and there is no one definition of success, because everyone's definition is completely different. Understanding what success means to you personally, and does that align with your own personal values, and I think it's also remembering that they will change over time, that your values.
Yeah, I mean, that never settles.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be like that. It shouldn't settle. You should be constantly reevaluating, but also life around you changes. I mean, one big change is parenthood. Like what I find important now versus before I had my girls, you know, I don't have enough fingers to count.
That was the biggest one for me as well.
You need to be flexible. It's again down to flexibility. And I think law firms are sometimes really inflexible when it comes to acknowledging a person's life situation. I mean, I saw this often with women who have children. Firms don't generally take that into account. You're required to just carry on as if nothing's happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. All right.
Design the ideal legal career path for me. That's a hard one.
Yeah, and I think we've just talked about, I think we've just talked about the fact that there isn't one. But I think I was designing it, if it was for me, I think now, and we've just talked about the fact that life changes as you go on. Right now, I think for me, the ideal legal path would be, God, that's such a tough question. But I do think
it's a tough question.
It's a really, really tough question.
But I think it's because you're right. It doesn't have an answer.
Yeah. I'm so interested to see what other people think about this.
Yeah.
And I think what will also be great is that, firstly, by the time this comes out, other people won't have heard this episode, so they won't be influenced by what we're saying.
I hope so.
They won't be influenced. They won't be able to be influenced by us saying, yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, the question that we have come up with. But I think if it was me, I would be much more inclined down the, I think I'd want in-house experience. I think I'd want in-house experience to get business experience. And I'd probably be out there doing it in some sort of consultancy basis, or sort of starting up my own business. I think just because of the nature of the fact that of what I do, business development means that I know how to go out there and win the work. So that wouldn't be something that fazed me.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it would be much more down that route than working in a law firm. But I think that's just for me.
I always get asked this really difficult question. So I often do these sort of webinars about career paths and for students. And the students always ask me, do I think it's necessary for them to go and do their training contract with a law firm? Right. So to be a consultant here, you don't necessarily need to be a qualified lawyer. I feel like if I could do it over, I probably would still do my training contract with a big commercial firm, because I think your mindset is so important. I was like a sponge. I mean, I learned so much, and I even learned stuff about business because I had to attend board meetings and stuff like that. But I would probably, this is not too far off from what you're saying about in-house counsel, but I would probably do my training contract again at a firm, because in order to understand what I don't want, I almost had to go through it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I wish it was like that you didn't have to crash out of that career path into another one, because it seems to me most people I speak to crashed out of it. Like it wasn't a graceful exit.
That's so true as well.
They slid sideways into a wall. And I don't know yet what the answer is to how to make that easier for people to exit if they want to. I think it's exposure.
Oh my God, that's such a good word for that. Yeah, it really is. And I just, whatever career path you take knowing that you can always change course.
Yeah.
That just because that something doesn't work out, you are not, you can change the situation. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important. And you can try things out. Your career lasts 30, 40 odd years. All right, so there's a huge amount of time.
Oh, crap. I'm only halfway.
The look on your face. A good thing that we're recording the video of this, because the look on your face was beautiful as I said that, and it would be a shame if people never got to see it. But your career is long enough that you can try things and try things again and try it again and
experiment.
And if it doesn't work out, you try something else.
And it's okay.
And it is okay.
It's not failure.
And failure is not final.
Exactly. I think this is a good place to stop, because people might have lost the will to live. I guarantee you that not every episode will just be Scott and I speaking. We will be asking the questions of guests who can help us find the answers to these questions that are too difficult for us. It's almost to satisfy our sense of curiosity, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, yeah, I can't wait to speak to people who give their own sense of what's gone on, what is going on in the legal career, with that view to how can we make how can we make a legal career that we can be happy in.
Yeah. Well, see you soon.
Take care, everyone.